and welcome back to Battle Brothers 40K, the podcast dedicated to all things glorious in the grim darkness of the far future. My name is Alex.
My name is Vandro.
All right, guys, and we are back. Had a epic hobby streak in the lead up to a really important mission in our narrative campaign. Ton of hobby on every level of the game: army building, terrain building, mission design, like reflections after the game and what we took away from it. But we're going to just start off with what we were doing in the build up to actually playing this game, because it had been a while since we played. And just to sort of set the stage, the mission called for an Eldar defensive line holding a mountain pass against an Imperial Guard, I guess, armored fist.
Exactly. The Battle of Alnatak.
Yes. It's a mission that I was very nervous about playing. I'm not used to being the defender, especially in a narrative game. Always the attacker. So I ended up building up like a big wraith host, and I had most of the stuff painted for that. I had wraith constructs galore. I'll go into that when we're talking about our army lists. But I had to add like a couple of utility pieces. And one of the things that I took away from my first two games is the challenges of Eldar fly units getting around terrain.
I think impassable terrain.
Yeah, impassable terrain. Before, anything with fly could just move over terrain as if it wasn't there. And now having to measure, it's hugely challenging. And night spinners are not really my style. I've never really used them. I know they're great, but they're not even really particularly good in into an IG matchup. And I need anti-tank. So the secret project I had been working on to sort of counter this terrain problem that I've been encountering was Crimson Hunters. So I repainted two of my Crimson Hunters, completely stripped them, rebuilt them, painted them, and was able to employ a bunch of really cool shading techniques that I had learned using my airbrush. It was the first time I'd ever really gotten the hang of doing that properly in a very like controlled and repeated way. And I'm super stoked with how they came out. They got a really positive response on Instagram, which was really cool to see. And they were just a really awesome addition to my collection overall. It made a really big impact in the game.
So for me, definitely not the first time that we've done this type of mission where the IG are moving, again, lengthwise up the board to seize an objective and to attack an Eldar defensive position. But the last time we did this, it must have been, maybe it was 5th edition, actually. 5th or 6th.
I think it was 8th, actually, because we did try it one more time in 8th edition.
Okay.
Yeah.
So regardless, a long time ago, and my army's changed a lot since then, and the rules have changed a lot as well. So what I was working on for this one was an overhaul of my Lehman Russ. I had 2 Lehman Russ that I resuscitated and repainted so that I could run my 3 exterminators and 2 demolishers. And then I also had a couple really awesome 3D printed Sentinels that I got off Etsy, and they're awesome. And they're gonna be Scout Sentinels for the Bloody Shoulder, which is of course the Kasserkin, Hydra, Hellhound, like the front, the Vanguard. So yeah, finished up those guys, and that was a really really fun project.
Yeah.
And then I was just going to jump into like the terrain, all the things we did for terrain. So, excuse me. So for this game, it was a wilderness setting. So we weren't using any of our ruins, and it was to reclaim the mountain pass. We have mountains, but
huge mountain pieces.
Yeah.
Pieces big enough to block like an Imperial Knight. from line of sight.
They're very large. Unfortunately, in this version of the game, they're not as playable. Like, they look great, and they could have like told that story well, but we're still sort of like understanding like or relearning what like how terrain works in the game. So we ended up making a new mountain pass. And I you might want to call it the mountain impassable because my brother put together these like walls of stone, and most of our mountains and our rock features for our wilderness board are like basically big blades of stone sticking out of the ground. So it did match in that way, but it just wasn't something that I felt once we put it on the board and we tried to set up the terrain for the game. It was clear that this was not going to be something that would work for the mission.
No, it was way too big. It ended up being like a great backdrop piece of terrain for like taking photos against and stuff like that. And it was fun to just put on the board to like basically on the edge of the board, and we could take it on and off again. Just to take photos, like glamour shots of the mission. So, like, we thought that those were going to play, like, a really big central role in just the aesthetic and the terrain required by the mission. And when that didn't work, we took them off the board. And we just basically realized that we didn't have enough terrain to just really bring the story of the mission to life. It didn't feel like a mountain pass at all. It just felt like some rocks in the middle of the wilderness. And
there's also something else I want to mention. So we made some not L-shaped ruins, but like L-shaped pockets of cover, basically doing the same thing where we've got like large stones in like L shape or a curved shape where tanks can pull up inside, get cover, or units can go inside, get cover. I don't know if you remember this, but I made it twice.
Yeah.
So I made them once. We made the mountain pass once, and then we're like, whoa, this didn't work. For this one, the reason why they didn't work is they didn't look organic enough to me. And then also, the base for them, I used...
chipboard.
Yeah, chipboard, thank you. And it just warped. It just absorbed too much paint, even though I sealed it before I painted it. So we had to remake all the pieces again. So...
Yeah.
And then we also realized we just didn't have enough pieces of terrain.
Yeah, we didn't have like the density that we really needed. And, we were pretty bummed out because we were like ready to play.
We were going to play the next day.
Yeah, we were going to play the next day. We were just like setting up the map. And it was definitely like, I know this might sound dramatic, but it was definitely sort of like a crossroads moment where we're like, well, do we just play? And because we spent so much time getting ready for this mission, we painted up like a shitload of units, all this stuff. Or do we hit the pause button, go back into the workshop, make more terrain, go out to the friggin' hardware store, get the polystyrene foam, all that
tiles.
The tiles, because we use laminate tiles as our basing. And you can only get those at it's only at Lowe's. It's not at Home Depot. And in the end, we were just like, you know what? We've been building up for this campaign for so long. We want to do it right. And
we just doubled down on it and sucked it up. And really glad that we did that because the board looked amazing.
Oh yeah, the board looked
great.
Sick. We had actually like gone to Sherman-Williams and had like a bunch of paint matched to GW paint for all of our terrain that we've held on to for a long time. It's all still in great condition. And we just went to town making new terrain with a lot of new techniques that we've picked up along the way, watching a bunch of YouTube channels and stuff like that. And it took us about 2 extra weeks. I mean, that's basically 4 off days, 4 dedicated days to doing hobby stuff over 2 weeks. And we brought the board to life, and we're super happy we did it. We were really happy with how it looked.
Yeah, and I guess I think that's going to be a reoccurring theme on this podcast is not just this episode, but on the show in general, is that we really want to make it right for us, and make sure that we're getting the most out of it, and enjoying the game in every aspect that we can. So without further ado, let's talk about the game. Let's talk about. I'll give a brief overview, although we touched on it already. So the game. This was the third game in our campaign, and in the original campaign book, it was called the Battle of Al-Natak. And so this was a hammer and anvil deployment, and the terrain pieces that we made were huge fins of line of sight blocking rocks, or boulders, or mountains, basically.
Yeah, like stony escarpment.
Yeah, think almost like Arizona style jutting rocks out of like a flat ground.
Exactly.
And then but there was a corridor lengthwise down the middle of the board, and at the end of it was the mountain pass, and within the mountain pass there were these Eldar ruins and a small forested area, and that's where my brother was, and I had to move up through no man's land, like down the corridor, and occupy his deployment zone. My objective was to have as many of my units in his deployment zone at the end of the game, and his objective was to destroy as many units as he could.
Yeah.
And prevent them from entering the deployment zone.
I'd get 1 victory point for each unit destroyed, and my brother would get 3 victory points for each unit that got into my deployment zone.
Mm-hmm. So that was the mission in general. Let's take a second to go over our lists. You can start.
Okay. So another unit that I actually just recently made, I haven't put it up on Instagram, but I'm super happy with how it came out. Autarch Wayleaper with the spear and fusion pistol. I had a Fireseer Skyrunner with 2 units of 3 Wind Riders, 2 Spirit Seers in a unit of 10 Wraith Guard, 10 Wraith Blades. I took 2 Wraith Lords, 2 Crimson Hunters, and 2 units of 5 Swooping Hawks.
So for my list, I ran with Creed, and this is Big Daddy Creed, although I was using Ursula's rules. For the campaign, when we were playing Apocalypse games, we said we were going to abandon certain rules, so we threw out the rule of 3. I ran with 4 squads of Kasserkin, armed with 2 plasma guns, 2 grenade launchers, and I had 2 squadrons of Scout Sentinels. They were all armed the same. There was 2 for the Bloody Shoulder and 2 for the Cadian 6th. They were armed with las cannons, hunter killer missiles, and I had 6 Bulgrin, 2 Hydra. I had 2 Exterminator tank commanders and 1 Exterminator, and then 2 Demolishers, 2 Basilisk, and 1 Manticore.
I forgot. I also had 3 Hornets. Can't leave home without them.
Yeah. So that was the list. Let's talk about how the game went, basically. First turn went to me, and I had it. Honestly, this entire game, my dice were ice cold. It was
terrible.
Absolutely brutal. One of those heartbreaking moments for any gamer, especially when we spent so much time working on like the pregame.
Yeah.
I started making some pretty good progress in the first turn. I was able to take out some of Alex's Wraith Guard, some jet bikes. I was putting wounds on one of the Wraith Lords.
But the Spirit Seer, I think he took out like 2 Wraith Guard, 2, maybe like 3 Wraith Guard and like 2 Wraith Blades, and then the Spirit Seer brought like 1 back for each unit. And
is that his ability for each unit? Oh
yeah,
my God.
So really strong, and they are very tough. Like right in the first turn, I was like, these guys are bricks. They're like really good against guard. I was really happy with how durable they were, because I had a ton of like, what was it, like two basilisks and 2 manticores?
1 manticore.
Yeah, 1 manticore sort of like unloading into them. And I think you were able to get angle on one of the Wraith units with one of your
Exterminator.
Yeah. So.
Yeah, but I did start to put a hurt on them, but in the second turn, things went south.
Yeah, when it went over to me, the Wraith Guard, the Wraith Guard all moved out and
Into cover.
into cover. And like the Wraith Guard had cover like basically the entire game, and just like lit up a Lehman Russ with their Wraith cannons. My Hornets moved out. I think I only had 2 Hornets on the board to start with, 1 in reserves. Because in this mission, you could have up to you had to have half of your units in reserves.
Of course, which is crucial.
Which is major, 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 which played into my hands very well. And this was like playing with that much stuff in reserves, in addition to the flyers, which didn't count against my reserve total, really brought back like my 6th and 7th edition play style, where it was like I called it the beta strike from hell, where I would put everything I possibly could into reserves and basically just dodge my opponent's like first turn and just bring the hammer down. So anyways, getting ahead of myself, on bottom of turn 1, the Wraith Guard moved out, blew up a Lehman Russ. The 2 of the Hornets, I think the 2 Hornets and the Wraith Lords combined their firepower to take out another Lehman Russ. I used Fire and Fade on the Wraith Guard to pull them back out of line of sight, and I think that was basically it. Yeah,
I gotta say, at this point, it was really cool to see Alex's Wraith Lord and Wraith Guard like coming out from behind the mountain pass, and because they have the Wraith Lords have such dynamic poses, they really look like they're peeking around the corner and just like, hey, bam, eat this,
Yeah, thanks for saying that. Because you know how much time I spent on those Wraith Lords. I converted them, like I cut their legs all up. Right. I did a bunch of sculpting to make them like running and lunging. I'm really happy with how they came out.
Yeah, they looked like super dynamic. And I know like the standard Wraith, I keep on saying Wraith Lord, Wraith Guard, whatever. The standard Wraith Lord are like so stiff,
Yeah, they're just like statues.
Yeah, and it reminds me of when you had the War Walkers the first time we were trying to make those guys run.
Oh, God. Broke them.
Yep, broke their feet off. Anyways, second turn, Guard did diddly.
They didn't do anything.
I missed everything. I failed every to wound. The wheels were falling off, and you could feel it.
You killed one Wraith Lord, because both the Wraith Lords were like out of line. They were in line of sight of everything at this point.
Right. Yeah.
Like one went down, another took like a bunch of wounds, but was still pretty much fine.
Yeah.
The Sentinels were doing pretty good too.
Yeah, Sentinels were doing great. Like, I think all in all, for me, target priority was a big challenge in this game. And then also like attacking with a unified front. I think I split up my firing too much.
Yeah.
It's hard not to though.
Yeah.
Because you know that those units are so tough. And I wasn't even shooting like units with invulnerable saves. No. I was mostly attacking the Wraith Guard.
Yeah, you did put some shots into the Wraith blades,
but they were stuck behind that mountain. I couldn't see them.
Yeah, they were not coming out, but like I think like your reasoning like made sense, because like you knew if those Wraith, like in the end game of the mission, if the Wraith Guard with the shields and axes were still intact, they were basically going to blockade the entire thing. Like them alone would have just walled you off.
Well, my thinking was no. I was aiming most of my firing towards the Wraith Guard.
Yeah, but you did put some shots into the blades.
Well, that's what I mean. I should have just put it all into the Wraith Guard.
Yeah, because they were crushing.
Yeah, those D cannons were too much,
and they were like returning fire when they lost a guy, and then I'd resurrect a guy.
Yep. So I also wasn't used to, it was a Spirit Seer.
Yeah.
I wasn't used to his ability. Also not used to like you hiding, you know?
Yeah. Used to like more like aggressive blitzkrieg style attack.
And contrary to what you were saying, I don't play with like units in reserve and haven't done.
Yeah.
So there was a lot of strategic like opportunities for me that I missed. But yeah, second turn for the guard was a dud. But the Eldar,
Yeah, the Eldar. Another unit I forgot to mention that I took was the Lynx. So like in turn 2, everything came out of reserves except for the Swooping Hawks. I was like saving them as like a last ditch like cleanup unit to get the guard infantry should they get into my deployment zone. So the Crimson Hunters came out of reserves. The Hornet, the third Hornet that was in reserves came out. What else came out? In the Lynx. And so they all came sort of like in the center of the board just to like lay down like massive firepower. And I mean, it was just a shitstorm of lances. Mm-hmm. It was just like bright lances galore. The Lynx alone is like, it's like, what is it? Strength 14, 5 shots, -3 AP, D6 damage.
it finished off one of the Lehman Russ by itself.
Yeah, it wasn't like spectacular. Like only 2 of its shots like ended up going through in the end.
It still did the job.
Yeah,
it's not like it took down a completely fresh Lehman Russ, but
no, but it was a solid performer for 180 points. It's like the same as a single Fire Prism, which is great. Fire Prism's probably better, but you know, if you have the Lynx and you want to use it, like if you're going to run like one Fire Prism or one Lynx, I would take the Lynx. And so it did its job, and the Crimson Hunters were awesome. They came in and just like their height advantage, they could basically see over all the terrain. They ignore the effects of obscuring terrain. So they're able to ignore the benefits of cover as well because they're so high up on their flying stands. And the Eldar just came in and just demolished. I think they took out all of the Lehman Russ except for
there was
one.
like one that was like left on, you know,
a few wounds.
Yeah. So that's 4 Lehman Russ down in the second turn. And one of the Hydras went too.
Yeah, one of the Hydras went, and the Wraith Lord like moved out. It helped out with its lance fire, taking something out, and then it went into combat against one of the Sentinels and destroyed it. Yeah, and that was really good. Although I think in your turn, which was pretty cool to see, was the Kasserkin actually put like a whooping on.
That was turn 3.
Oh, that was turn 3?
Yeah.
Okay. So it was a crusher of Eldar turn 2.
Yeah, and like I said, this is like when the wheels fell off. So, but in the third turn, all of my reserves came in, and we started like pushing up the board. But honestly, there was nothing that was going to break through the Wraith Wall. It was just too strong. Yeah. And also, the other thing was, this is one of the issues that we'll talk about later, is just the terrain was so restrictive. Like, it did exactly what it's supposed to do, but it was more like shooting fish in a barrel than just like a force being... It was being funneled, but it was like, there's no chance to break through. There's no chance for my guys to get around. And moving around those long pieces of terrain, my Bulgrins made an advance, but it was clear that they were not going to get to their target without just being shot to shit. So,
or just avoided.
Well, I mean, they're going to move into your deployment zone. So, but it's only turn 3. It's like, yeah, you could ignore them because there's like 3 more turns to destroy everything. Mm-hmm. But yeah, the Kasserkin did do a great job. I think they took down one of the Wraith Lords. Mm-hmm. But it was at this point we had been playing for a long time. And sadly,
we called it.
We called it there. And I think something that might have changed my mind about it, which we realized afterwards, was the difference in points values. So I still don't think... I'm not sure. Like, because if I stayed in your deployment zone to the end of the game, I get 3 points for each unit in your deployment zone.
Yeah.
And you got a single point for every unit destroyed.
Yeah.
I still think you would have won. But that might have changed my mind. But
yeah, we sort of like at that point we had a bunch of not like we weren't like grumpy or anything like that, but there was like a bunch of rules things that had come up that really slowed the game down, and we sort of forgot like. Everybody's been in one of those situations where like you sort of forget like all of the rules for the mission, like when you get caught up in just like a lengthy rules conversation and the sort of score. Like I remembered at the end of I think like after the game I was like, damn, you know what, you would have gotten 3 points for each unit that got through. But it was it was pretty decisive. It was a lot like the first game that we played. Or not the first game, actually the second game, where I just got absolutely pasted. So it was, it was quite decisive, but it was disappointing that the game wasn't more competitive. But overall, it was worth it, and I think we learned a lot.
Oh, definitely. Let's talk about some of the problems with the mission, and then we'll talk about like takeaways and the wins.
Yeah.
So. Number one, I guess I want to say, Alex played a great game. He had an awesome list. The board looked visually great, I thought, for our standards. And it was a great learning experience. Challenges for the game were definitely like terrain type and hammer and anvil. And for me, definitely I could have written a better list for this mission.
And Hammer and Anvil is just the long ways deployment for the non-old school amongst us.
Yeah, they don't call it that?
I don't know what they call it anymore.
Okay. So, yeah, like I had said, like we wanted it to feel like a mountain pass like you did. There was only one way through the middle of the board, and it was like maybe like 8 to 10 inches wide. In between like these two curved spires. You guys will see in the pictures when we post on Instagram. And then on either side of those, there was like room for infantry to move, but not tanks. So all of my tanks had to go through the middle of the board. And with it being like on a hammer and anvil setup where like the board's only 4 feet wide and basically 2 of it is blocked, like that's just not enough to make the game work for me, in my opinion.
Especially at 2,500 points,
right?
Like I can't even imagine playing on the new map dimensions, whatever they are. It's not like because we play on a 6x4, and
right.
now it's like even smaller now, and I felt like 6x4. I still feel like 6x4 is too small for 2,000 points. Way too small.
Yeah. And we've always talked about, like, if we're going to play Apocalypse, it would be great to play on, like, an 8x6?
Yeah.
And that's actually one of our goals. Go big or go home, brother. But, yeah, so that was one of the issues. Also, like, the length of the pieces of terrain really slowed my movement down. So those were the big things, as well as the differences between the 5th edition campaign and 10th edition. And one of those things is reserves, the way that reserves worked.
Yeah. It was kind of wonky because... in 5th edition, like coming in off of anything but your own deployment zone was it was called outflanking, and only units that had either like the outflank universal special rule or the scout universal special rule were allowed to come in off of those angles on the board.
But we decided in this game that we weren't going to do that.
Yeah.
We weren't going to use reserves from, like, I couldn't just wait till the end of the game and then show up in my brother's deployment zone. Because if I did that, I mean, I definitely would have won,
Yeah. but like we wanted to play with some ability without like the outflank / scouts universal special rule to come in on like some portion of no man's land, and but like even that like wasn't quite enough to it was just incongruous. Like there was just like
because like the game that we played, like it just wasn't competitive enough. It was too one-sided. If we had used that scout outflank rule, like I definitely would have won. I could very easily have won because it's 3 points for every unit. I have to have 1,000 points in reserve. I have 4 squads of Kasrkin, 2 scout sentinels. They all have the scout special rule. So if they come on, that's, what is it? 4, 6 times 3 is 18. 18 points. I don't even have 18 points on the board. So it's just like right there. You couldn't destroy 18 units that aren't there.
Yeah.
But then on the other side of it, the way that we played it was like, oh man, there's just no chance to get through this terrain with this board set up.
And the way that like those universal special rules are handed out now for like the current units is way different than it was like in 5th edition. It was like, like the scout special rule is not just about like wasn't just about forward deployment. Like I said, it's for outflanking off of the table edges. Mm-hmm. And it was like those were like very deliberately handed out to certain units. So that was one of those things that would require like a more forethought from us, like in regards to like what we wanted to do with that. And we didn't really consider it going into the game.
It was something that like basically we were figuring out mid-game, which is like really slowed the game down.
Yeah, which sucks. And this is like, it just goes to show that it's like worth play testing even narrative missions. Just like play test the shit out of competitive missions. If you're really trying to like tell like a story, you got to make sure that like the mechanics that bring that story to life actually work.
Yeah. And, that sort of brings us to, like I was saying before, like the spirit of this podcast and the spirit of like our gameplay is we play tested the first mission with less points, and we made it part of the scenario. And then we played it again with full points. Now we've tried the second scenario, take the mountain pass, and the guard were repelled, sadly. But we'll return because we're not going to give up on the mountain pass mission. And we're going to play it again with adjustments that we're making. And part of the thing, I think part of the fun is, it's not like adapting campaign. Like it is fun to adapt the campaigns and to campaign settings from previous editions, but it's also fun to find success in a basic narrative. And I mean, this is what we were talking about. We were just going to be like, okay, well, this didn't work. I guess, we're just going to move on to the next game because we've got a lot of work to do for that one too. A lot of terrain building, a lot of army building and all this stuff. But, a day later I was like, hey, why don't we play it again? Because we need to be able to, and this is the basic narrative, is like attack and defend, hold the objective, hold the line.
If we're going to continue to do like narrative campaigns, like we need to be able to come up with solutions for mission design that makes that work. Mm-hmm. Like finding like the balance point and like attacker defender missions where there's a lot of like line of sight blocking terrain, whether it's like mountain passes or imperial fortresses or whatever. We got to find out like, hey, how do we make this story work? Like, how would you make like the Siege of Terra work with 10th edition? And maybe that's one of the reasons why the Horus Heresy game stuck with the 7th edition rules, is because the way that flyers work, deep strike, the universal special rules that existed in those editions were better suited for narrative play.
Yeah, and I mean, of course, 10th edition has gone in the complete opposite direction.
Yeah.
Where holding objectives is literally turn by turn.
Yeah.
And I guess that's another thing that I just want to say. It's a really hard thing to get into your enemy's deployment zone by the end of the game on foot or by tread or by wheel or whatever it is, to get there and have enough forces to hold it. You know what I mean?
I've never been a fan of Hammer and Anvil games. Like, I always just feel like it goes one way in the extreme for one player or the other. It's like, even if you really, really game plan, like, just like really minor variables can throw the thing like completely into chaos. Like, I always hate it. Even when I'm on the winning side of it, it's usually some sort of like weird, janky thing that happens. Like, whether it was like in 8th edition where you're getting like move blocked by flyers or something stupid like that. Or just like how many models you have on the board are it's just, it creates like this crazy log jam, which is not fun, thematic, or competitive, you know?
So we're really excited to replay the mission. So we're going to go, I don't know what this is called now, but we're going to go like diagonally.
This used to be called Vanguard deployment.
Right. So we're going to do that. We're going to open up the terrain. We're going to look at maybe some different pieces of terrain. And this is going to be the Imperial Guard's last chance to seize the mountain pass.
Yep. Like, regardless, there would be like some kind of narrative knock on from like the Eldar win in this one, whether it was like dramatically slowing the Imperial Guard advance, which will do, you know, something to impact later missions, or something like that. But one thing I did want to mention, this has been like, you know, I've talked to Wes a lot about this, is that one of the translation issues from 5th to 10th edition, especially with this campaign, is that this campaign was meant to showcase flyers too. Yeah. Flyers, like Elysian drop troops versus Eldar Corsairs, which are two really dynamic forces, especially using the 7th edition rules, where you were allowed 2 flyers in 7th edition, 6th and 7th edition, and they could only be hit on 6s unless you had the Skyfire special rule, which is a total game changer for Imperial Guard and for Eldar too, because that, like, that aerial advantage, like that hard to hit rule, gave Eldar a lot of staying power with fast moving units, and it also gave Guard a lot of mobility. And with like Elysian drop troops, like deep striking all over the place, the Eldar Corsairs with wings zipping in, out, and everywhere. You know, I think this mission was envisioned with 2 way more dynamic forces playing against each other than the sort of like, maybe at times like overly simplified 10th edition mission, 10th edition rules, where flyers can be hit just like any other unit.
Yeah. So I was just taking a look at this when you were talking about like how many flyers you could take. The mission is asking for 2,000 for Imperial Guard, 2,000 points of Imperial Guard. In addition, up to 1,000 points of Imperial Guard super heavy tanks and flyers may be chosen. Yeah. So we decided to go away. Oh, okay. So I want to mention to all the Imperial fanboys who are listening to this podcast just to listen to me talk about my Imperial Guard, that I decided that, like, with this layout, I don't even think that moving the Shadow Sword up the board is like, or having it on the board is going to be beneficial. In hindsight, if you don't have flyers, like, something to blast a hole in the enemy line would have been great.
Just sitting in your back line.
Oh, yeah, it doesn't need to go forward.
No.
You know, it can, but it doesn't need to. But yeah, it's not, and I don't know what 5th edition rules were regarding, like, if you're playing an Apocalypse game, do you still follow, like, formation rules and all of that kind of stuff?
Yeah, there was, like, the Force Org chart.
For Apocalypse as well?
I think there was. And This one was definitely, like, this came out at the end of 5th edition, and I'm sure that they knew, because, like, especially the Forge World stuff that was on like the cusp of either edition seemed like it was designed for the mission that, or the edition that was just about to come. So like theoretically, like they were thinking about like, Imperial Guard players playing with like Marauder bombers and Eldar with like Night Wings and all sorts of crazy stuff, which would have been amazing. Like I feel like played in its edition or like 5th, 6th, or 7th, this would have been a totally different experience, like probably way more balanced. That being said, we got to figure out a way to do it in 10th.
Yeah, and this sort of, talking about like, we talked about the opportunities, right? We talked about the challenges. Let's talk about the things that were awesome.
Yeah, go ahead, dude.
And one of the things that I want to talk about is like, going into this, I was debating so much like which units to take. And I've talked about, in previous episodes of the podcast, just like wanting to finish units, like finish painting them. Finish building them, finish painting them, like finish rounding out a squadron or whatever. So I think leading up to it, I can't remember what I was working on, honestly. It was something that I didn't end up taking in my list. And then I completely switched gears.
What's your Acadians?
Well, I did do them. I'm not sure. Anyways, what I did do was just decide, you know what? I'm gonna make my Lehman Russ work. And I know that I've talked about this in the past, but basically I had some Lehman Russ that I had glued on their sponsons and glued on their turrets and all this stuff. And on this one, I just said, fuck it. I'm going to go on eBay. I'm going to buy a new turret. I'm going to buy 2 new sponsons. I'm going to magnetize everything. So it was super fun for me to build the Lehman Russ core of my army that I've always wanted. The goal is 2 squadrons, and I have the 6th one built. But that's just like a dream come true for me as like a guard player. The other thing was, and this wasn't a dream come true until recently, was to have these sentinels built for the Bloody Shoulder. And man, these guys look fucking awesome.
You gotta get them up on Instagram, dude.
I'll take some pictures soon.
Sick.
And they're done in like the black and red, and I couldn't be more thrilled. To the guy, I don't know if it's possible this guy even listens to the podcast, but the guy who made them did an awesome job. They look so cool.
Yeah.
And they fit so well. And in 10th edition, obviously, it has been a goal of mine to have like at least 2 squadrons of sentinels, because they're just like, with the daring recon ability, they are clutch.
Yeah.
So that was really fun. A really fun thing to do and to see on the board finally. And then I guess I would just say like the terrain. I mean, like having that mountain pass with the Eldar ruins in it. The Eldar ruins and the GW trees, tree stand that we have is like ancient.
But it looks so good.
But it looked amazing. So it was cool to see new terrain with old terrain, and we thought we had enough for our wilderness board. But those sort of like L-shaped rocky emplacements, essentially.
They ended up fitting like really. They fit in like really well as like extension pieces to like old terrain, or just like standalone pieces, which were really fun and easy to use.
Right. So I guess, and the fact that we built the terrain, then rebuilt it, then we're playing the game and we're going to replay it, and we built up our armies considerably. I mean, that's a considerable amount of additional points. 500 points or something like that for me. No, it's more than that. Maybe like 600 points like built and painted for this game. And I guess the big takeaway I want to say is that, yeah, I wish I was playing more games. Yeah, I wish I was, that this had been like more successful. But the way that it was successful is that like now the stuff that we have is built and painted. Now the board that we have is like full. I mean,
we basically made like 2 tables worth of terrain.
Something like that.
Yeah, for like a normal game, like we would probably use half of this terrain.
Right. So, and that stuff's not going anywhere. So the progress that we made is something that we're going to be able to enjoy for a long time. And like the crazy thing is when we're talking about this, I'm like, oh yeah, I've got a vendetta in the dip. Maybe I'll get another one. Maybe I'll throw in
the vulture.
Yeah, possibly.
I mean, you've got it. It's
I've got the vulture's completely
fully
done,
painted,
done in the
so
bloody
sick.
shoulder scheme. It looks awesome, but just the fact that like I could bring those troops on, drop them in the last turn or whatever if they survive that long, blah blah blah. But all the progress that we make for these games, it's like a lot of work. But then later, we're gonna really be able to enjoy it when we're just, oh hey, let's do a game where we're like hold the line. It's like, okay, we got it, boom.
Yeah.
And I wanted to say one thing. Any of the listeners out there who may have a great idea about rules regarding like a hold the line mission like this, like if you have them, please share.
Yeah, I've been listening to people talk about some of the stuff they've been doing at like Horus Heresy narrative events. And one of the things is like, I don't know if I really want to do this, but it's like you're able to roll off to bring back units destroyed on the first turn, which is kind of cool. So you get a chance. And maybe like I'd have to download their mission pack and see what it is. Maybe units automatically come back at the end of the first turn that get destroyed, so you can have fun with your big toys and get a chance to do something in your own turn. But yeah, definitely would like to hear what people have to say about that. My big wins for this is so I've been like really enjoying watching terrain videos on YouTube, which is something I never gave a crap about. I was always just like super focused on getting my army ready, because before I was just playing pickup games, and we always had enough terrain, like mixing the city board and the wilderness board to play, really fun competitive pickup games. But so I was getting really hyped, and every gamer knows about like when you're getting hyped theoretically to do something, and you're sitting there dreaming up all this crazy shit that you're going to do. And then like you do it and you're like, okay, that was fun. But like when you meet like the setback of like, I spent like a long part of like my precious day off making that first piece of terrain, which didn't end up being usable, but I didn't get down about it. And I actually took the lead on building all of the other terrain that we ended up using. My brother definitely helped me, but it was fun. It was a good feeling for me to sort of take the lead and take I'd say like a majority of those pieces from start to finish. And my brother just was able to help out. I felt good in giving him a break from having to always do all the terrain. And I was happy with like the quality of the terrain that I made. I used a bunch of like new techniques to help bring it to life. So I was really happy about that. I was super stoked to use sort of like dark horse unit like the Crimson Hunter. That was definitely a star unit. They look awesome. Get my airbrush shading on point, which I'm definitely excited to take forward into new projects. And I think just committing towards playing the kind of games, or not even committing, to actually playing the games that we want to play, and not playing like a compromised version of the game. Even though the game wasn't competitive in the end, as competitive as we'd like it to be, it was awesome to just be like, no, like we're not going to compromise on just the total hobby of what we're doing here. Like we're so into this campaign, let's play it properly. And we had the sort of like self-control and the determination to hold, to like pause and take a whole bunch of projects to completion after we thought we were already to the finish line. And every gamer knows how tough that can be sometimes.
And also, I mean, there are lopsided victories in war.
Yeah.
I mean, it makes sense. Like you can tell a story. I mean, we did tell a story.
Yeah.
It was like the terrain was too difficult to traverse.
Yeah.
The Eldar were too dug in. They were too fast, and they were, too armored in this like bottleneck, and we got turned back.
Yeah.
And we're going to come back, and we're going to take the mountain pass, and we're going to destroy those Eldar ruins. Yeah.
Hold.
We're going to burn them to the ground. But yeah, I mean, it's like a narrative all unto itself. Like, so, and then, yeah, just to come back and not give up on it. Cause that was the other thing, was the option was just to keep on moving. And it's going to be like, it's going to be another apocalypse game, a larger one. Then it's going to be, it's just one different adventure after another, ending in a kill team on a board that we haven't built. So it's like, why did we spend all this time just to basically never revisit this thing? Mm-hmm. Let's do it. Let's just make sure that we gave it 100%. So yeah, if anyone does have feedback or like some really killer rules for something like this, we'd love to hear from you. But yeah, it was a great learning experience, and like I said, the gains that we made we get to keep it forever.
Yeah. The board is locked and loaded, and
the armies are more glorious than ever.
Yeah, I mean, like the armies are like huge apocalypse armies now. Like, I mean, we'll probably easily play like 3,500 points aside now, fully painted.
Yeah, that would be a breeze.
Yeah, super cool stuff. So it was really fun in the end. It was very like memorable like moment in just our time playing 40K, and I'm really glad we did it.
For sure. So yeah, the next, as I've said, the next game is going to be to retake the mountain, and then after that, what we're planning on doing is like a double board, a 6x8, apocalypse game, and truly an apocalypse game with super heavies that I think it says 3,000 points.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the Titans, the Knights are coming out to play. I'm bringing out my Wraith Knight for this one.
Shadow Sword will be there. That one's going to be a lot of fun. That one's just kill.
Yeah, it's pure kill points, and that'll be like a nice, like low pressure game in terms of.
For me.
Yeah. No. Yeah, for your puny brain to comprehend.
Oh my god.
But just there's not a lot of like mental gymnastics you need to figure out in terms of strategizing for the game. You're just trying to
adapting 5th to 10th.
Yeah, you're just playing a basic like kill points game, which should be a lot of fun.
But we talked about incorporating some interest, some aspect of like strategy to be seizing an objective or something, which we might visit. But
yeah, there are objectives in that game. We just haven't sort of decided on what they want to be. There's 3 objectives.
Okay.
Yeah, there's like 1 in the middle of the board, and then like 2 in the Eldar.
I know what one of them's going to be.
One of them's going to be your dead carcass.
No, it's going to be Mama.
Oh, he's got to be the guy in the middle.
He's got that deets. He's got the valuable intel for the Emperor.
But we got a lot of fun stuff to work on, like stuff that we've already started.
Yeah, do you want to talk about what you're working on?
Yeah, so I'm really, really, really excited for the final mission, which is a kill team mission that we're going to be using the Space Hulk terrain for to represent like the inside of an Imperial facility. And so I'm number one, I'm really excited about using all of that terrain. We have two full boards of it. But I'm making a Corsair kill team where every single guy is like completely customized. So I've been getting like all sorts of bits together using bits that I've saved for years. And I'm really stoked with how each of the guys has come out so far. So I'm making like another Corsair Prince on foot who will count as like my Fell Arc. He's built, just waiting for paint. I made a custom Shade Runner. I've also made I think it's the Kernite, like the Blade Fighter. And I'm really stoked with how all of them are coming out. And I have a cool guy to represent the Wayfinder, the Psyker as well. So this is like really getting back into like my OG roots, like when I first got into Eldar Corsairs, where I was kit bashing like there was no tomorrow, like every single unit was customized. So I'm really excited about how they're coming out, and I'm also doing the Incarn in a really unique paint scheme that I'm super excited to show off and to actually paint. So super fun units to come.
I'm surprised that that's like a super unique paint scheme. I mean, it's, I think, one of the coolest pictures. We won't let's not reveal.
Yeah.
Tease it, but that's my favorite version that I've seen.
Yeah.
I'm excited based on how it looks already. Something fun that I've been enjoying is Gaunt's Ghosts. I ordered those and started reading the book series, which has been fucking awesome.
Yeah.
Oh man, I was reading last night and I was just loving it.
Really? You didn't tell me about this.
No, I know, man. It was like so first battle that Gaunt is well, I think it's first battle that he's leading the Tanith first and only, and the main characters are appearing, and they're fighting heretic guardsmen who, like, obviously are like accursed and tainted by chaos, and they have like their gas masks are like fused into their faces.
Yeah.
And the troops have never seen anything like it, and they're horrified, and they're using like chemical warfare on Gaunt's ghosts, and
God.
guys are like walking through acid, and
Oh, Jesus.
and guys being like captured and their hands and feet cut off, and they're being like impaled on an altar, and it's all my favorite stuff about like
40K
and chaos, and you know, I used to write like horrific stories like that in D&D, so
yeah,
just right up my alley. And you know, whenever I think chaos, it's like we have to have blood and gore. I mean, I put blood and gore on any model that I can.
Yeah. Well,
so,
like our world eaters are fucking
like,
caked.
Yeah, they're like covered in blood, dripping in blood for the blood god.
That's it. This is my brother's first foray into Dan Abnett's books,
Yeah.
and I like only in the past like couple of years got into Dan Abnett, and I mean, just absolutely fell in love with reading all of his stuff. So I'm excited. I haven't actually read Gaunt's Ghost, but it's fun hearing my brother get so stoked.
Yeah, so that's been super cool, and painting them's been fun. I'm painting them as true as I can to their classic style, which is nice to break up painting guardsmen in like my traditional scheme. Let's see. Like my brother mentioned, I finished reworking my Cadians, so now they're true and WYSIWYG to 10th edition. And after that, it's like the sky's the limit. I've got a ton of new units I could paint. Probably going to work on my Rogel Dorns. I've got the double Dorn. And going to be working on that. And yeah, I'm not certain, honestly. That's the fun thing is I've got, and I think I've gone through this list before, but I have the Lord Solar. I have the Rough Riders, 2 squads of 5. I've got the double Dorn. I also have another Manticore, a 3rd Hydra, a 6th Lehman Russ. It's like it's starting to get serious. No, I only have one more Hellhound to finish.
Oh, I forgot you finished one of them.
Yeah. But super fun times.
Yeah.
I mean, this is what I was saying. It's like you get to a certain point and there's like no regrets because the list. I mean, finishing all that stuff, I've got like 4,000, maybe 5,000 points.
I mean, this is like what you dreamed of when you first got into the game,
right,
where you just like look at your fucking collection and you've got like squadron after squadron after squadron of tanks, like not squads of guys, like squadrons of tanks,
triple battalion, squadrons of tanks, sentinels, you know, pretty soon to be super heavies, and just fun times. And I just got these 2 carrying cases, and I was like, oh, I'm gonna get another one of these things. I'm like, fuck, I might as well get like 3 more.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna have to figure out a storage system for all this stuff once it gets built. But just loving it, loving the hobby, and And although I haven't chatted with so many of you, thanks to everyone who's listening. The podcast has been super fun for us, and we're hoping everyone's enjoying it. Would really love to hear from you guys too. Drop a comment on the Instagrams or the YouTubes. We would love to see some photos of what you guys are working on and some thoughts about what we're doing. If you have anything to share, like I was saying, interesting takes on our missions or anything, we'd love to hear from you guys.
Yeah, there's a big bump in listeners on the last episode. Super stoked to see you guys coming out. But yeah, let us know what you're up to. Let us know what you think about what we've been up to as well. And we'll be back soon with a ton more hobby progress, probably another game in the bag. And looking forward to talking with all you guys next time. All right.
Happy gaming.